I never thought the last words I'd ever hear from my parents would come through a text message. Not a phone call, not even a voice note. Just cold, plain letters on a screen that completely shattered the life I had known for 28 years. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how my own parents told me I was no longer part of this family, and what I did next that changed everything. I grew up in a beautiful house on the edge of the city. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. My father ran a successful construction company that my grandfather had started. My mother was the elegant woman who hosted dinners and charity events. And then there was me, the quiet, obedient daughter who always tried to make everyone happy. I learned early on that love in our house had conditions. Good grades, perfect behavior, choosing the right friends, and later, making the right decisions. I followed every rule. I studied business because that's what my father wanted. I worked in the family company every summer. I even turned down a scholarship to study abroad because my mother said it would break her heart if I left. I convinced myself that this was what family meant: sacrifice. That one day, all the love I poured into them would come back to me. But something inside me started to change when I turned 26. I met someone who saw me, truly saw me. His name was Ryan. He wasn't from our circle. He came from a simple background, worked as an architect, and made me laugh in a way I had forgotten was possible. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I kept our relationship quiet for almost a year. I knew my parents wouldn't approve, but love has this way of making you brave. So one Sunday evening, I sat them down in our living room and told them the truth. The silence that followed still echoes in my bones. My father's face turned red. My mother started crying, not sad tears, but angry ones. They said everything I feared, that I was ungrateful, that I was throwing away everything they had built, that Ryan would ruin my future and embarrass the family name. I tried to explain that I loved him, that I wanted their blessing, not their permission. But they weren't listening. That night, my father said something I'll never forget. "If you choose him, don't expect us to be there when it all falls apart." I left their house with a heavy heart, but still believing that time would heal things. I thought parents couldn't stay angry forever. I was wrong. For the next few months, things became tense but manageable. I moved in with Ryan. We got engaged quietly. I continued working at the family company, hoping that showing them my dedication would soften their hearts. I even tried to include them in small ways, inviting them to dinner, sending pictures of our new apartment. But every attempt was met with coldness. Then came the day that broke everything. It was a normal Tuesday afternoon. I was at the office, finalizing plans for a big housing project that I had personally led. My phone buzzed. It was a group text from my mother. The message was addressed to me, my father, and my younger brother. It read, "Emma, after careful thought and prayer, we have decided you are no longer part of this family. Please don't contact us again. We wish you well in your new life, but our door is closed. Do not embarrass us further." I read it 3 times, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. 28 years of memories, of sacrifices, of love reduced to a single paragraph. No explanation, no conversation, just a deletion. I called my mother immediately. It went straight to voicemail. I called my father, same thing. My brother texted me privately. "Sorry, sis, they made their decision. I can't go against them." That moment, something inside me died. The little girl who just wanted her parents to be proud of her finally understood she would never be enough for them. I went home and cried in Ryan's arms for hours. The pain was so deep it felt physical. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at that text, reading it over and over, trying to find some softness between the words. There was none. For weeks, I was a ghost. I barely went to work. The betrayal felt like poison spreading through my veins. These were the people who raised me, the ones who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Instead, they threw me away like I was nothing. But slowly, something else started growing underneath the pain, anger, quiet at first. Then louder. I realized I had spent my entire life shrinking myself to fit into their perfect picture. I had ignored my own dreams. I had chosen their approval over my happiness. And in the end, it still wasn't enough. That was the moment everything changed. I looked at Ryan one night, my eyes red from crying, and whispered, "I'm done being their daughter. From now on, I'm going to become someone they can never ignore." That's exactly what I did. I started by resigning from the family company the very next week. My father tried to fight it, saying I had responsibilities. I reminded him that according to their text, I was no longer family, so I no longer had responsibilities either. The first few months were terrifying. I had some savings, but not much. Ryan and I were newly married and trying to build our life together. I started freelancing as a project consultant for smaller construction firms. At night, I worked on something bigger, a business plan for my own company. I named it Phoenix Homes. It wasn't just a name. It was a promise to myself. I was going to rise from the ashes they left me in. I focused on affordable, beautiful housing for young families, the kind of homes my parents' company never cared about because the profit margin was smaller. I poured every emotion I had into it. The betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak. All of it became fuel. 6 months after that text message, I landed my first major project. Then another. Then another. Word started spreading about this passionate young woman who actually cared about her clients. Within a year, Phoenix Homes was getting recognized in local magazines. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual friends that things at my parents' company weren't going well. My brother, who had been handed everything, didn't have the same drive or attention to detail. Several big projects were delayed. Clients were unhappy. Money was being mismanaged. I didn't celebrate their struggles. At least, not at first. Part of me still felt guilty for even thinking about it. But then something happened that removed any remaining guilt. My mother called me one evening, almost 18 months after the text. I almost didn't pick up. When I finally did, her voice was different, smaller. "Emma, things have been difficult. Your father is well. We need help with the company. Family should stick together in hard times." I was silent for a long moment. Then I asked the question that had lived in my heart for so long. Am I still family? "Mom," the line went quiet. She didn't have an answer. I told her I would think about it and hung up. That call lit a fire in me. I realized they didn't want a relationship with me. They wanted what I could do for them. They wanted the version of me that sacrificed everything. The version that no longer existed. So I made my decision. I started publicly sharing parts of my story. Not in a bitter way, but honestly. I created a small Instagram page for Phoenix Homes where I occasionally posted about my journey as a woman building something from nothing. I never named my parents, but those who knew our family could connect the dots. The response was overwhelming. So many people reached out, men and women who had also been rejected by their families. Their messages gave me strength. I started a small community group for people healing from family betrayal. It grew quickly. My business exploded. Within 3 years, Phoenix Homes had become one of the fastest-growing construction companies in the region. We won awards. We were featured in major publications. I was invited to speak at conferences about ethical business and women in leadership. My parents' company, on the other hand, continued to decline. They lost several major contracts. Banks started calling in loans. The perfect image they had protected for decades was cracking. The final chapter came when their biggest project fell through and they faced possible bankruptcy. One afternoon, my father showed up at my office without warning. He looked older, thinner. The powerful man I remembered was gone. He asked if we could talk. I let him in. He didn't apologize, not really. He talked about legacy, about blood, about how families make mistakes but should forgive. He asked if I would consider partnering with them or investing in their company to save it. I listened quietly until he finished. Then I looked him in the eyes and said, "You sent me a text telling me I was no longer your daughter. You closed the door. Now I'm closing mine." I told him that Phoenix Homes would be making an offer to purchase several of their remaining assets, including the family house I grew up in, through a third party. It was a fair offer, more than the market value given their financial troubles. But it came with one condition. They could never publicly claim any connection to my success. He left without saying another word. 6 months later, the deal went through. I now own the house I grew up in. I turned it into a community center for young entrepreneurs who come from difficult family situations. Every week, I meet people there who feel broken and invisible, just like I once did. My parents still live in the city, but their world has become very small. The last I heard, my brother moved to another state. My mother occasionally sends messages on holidays. I reply politely but keep my distance. I don't hate them anymore. That anger slowly turned into something else, freedom. Ryan and I now have a beautiful baby girl. When I look at her, I make a promise every single day. She will never have to earn my love. She will never be discarded for not being perfect. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most will hurt you the deepest. But that pain doesn't have to define you. You can take that heartbreak and build something beautiful with it. You can become someone they never imagined you could be. I went from being erased by a text message to creating a life richer than anything they could have given me. The girl they threw away came back stronger. And I finally found the family I was always meant to have, not through blood, but through choice, through love, and through the courage to rise again. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, I want you to know you're not alone. Your comeback story is still being written, and it's going to be beautiful.